Now, if you think Goths were a first-century nomadic army from Eastern Europe, of course you did, then you probably won't know about 21st-century Goths like singer Marilyn Manson, who inspired a nation of teenagers to dye their hair and dress up in black PVC. Goths are an angst-ridden subculture that's been around since the mid-80s, with its own music, literature and fashion. Not immediately the kind of people you'd expect to see in your local Anglican church, but that's where you'd be wrong, as Dominic Holland discovered.
After a beach on a sunny day, the place you'd least expect to find a load of Goths would be an Anglican church. Until now, that is, because these guys give a whole new meaning to Goth be with you.
We shall not stray.
The Reverend Marcus Ramshaw is now into his second year of giving Gothic services. So we all know what Goths look like, we've all seen them in the street, but what actually is a Goth?
Goths themselves sort of argue amongst themselves about what is a Goth. They score Goth points against each other. Partly it's their clothes and their music, but ultimately it's sort of just an interest and fascination with the darker side of life.
Establishing a Eucharist just for Goths, why did you want to do that, Marcus?
A lot of my friends who go to Goth nightclubs used to go to church but had stopped going. They felt the church had let them down in the past. I was thinking about, I want to try and find a new way of getting people to come to church. I want to try and persuade some of my friends to come to church.
Yeah.
So I just wrote the Goth Eucharist.
I suppose people associate Goth immediately with the occult and Satanism. Is there any truth in that?
Quite the reverse. 3/4 of the people that come to the Goth Eucharist are confirmed. If anything, they're more likely to be interested in New Age, holistic spirituality groups, maybe Wicca, but certainly not Satanism at all.
So why do you think the general church sort of cheer up, Jesus loves you message doesn't wash with them?
Young people today are 10 times more likely to be depressed than their grandparents. The stresses of work, the expectations to succeed, the collapse of relationships, things actually just aren't like that. And just sort of saying to somebody, you know, Jesus loves you, fine,
it feels empty.
It's an insult, actually. I mean, it's not just empty, but it's actually quite a patronising insult.
But I wonder what Marcus's regular flock make of swapping the liturgy for Sisters of Mercy in their beloved 13th century church. Phyllis Osborne is the church warden and has been coming to St Edward's for 40 years and is certainly not a Goth. Phyllis, it's your first Goth Eucharist. Are you slightly nervous?
No, I'm just interested and curious.
Well, what did you think as a parishioner when Marcus announced he's going to have a Goth Eucharist?
Well, I think people had visions of black mass and naked virgins on the altar and stuff like this. But we were ignorant, and ignorance produces fear.
Why do you think Marcus is doing the Goth Eucharist?
The point was that the church appeared to flourish, but in fact, of course, it gradually wasted, because natural wastage took away the older people, and we were not bringing in any fresh blood.
I wish I had an angel for one moment of love.
So hold the silver bullets then. Goths are not what they seem, and since Marcus has started his Gothic Eucharists, numbers at them have trebled.
We gather tonight in the presence of God to honour His name, to listen to His word, and to remember His sacrifice.
Each service focuses on a different issue relating to the experience of young people and Goths in particular.
May light shine in the darkness for all who suffer from depression and despair, the unwanted and the unloved, and for those whom we find it hard to love.
Some of you have asked me to preach about self-harm, and I'm happy to try to do so. It's not an easy subject for a preacher.
One thing that is an overriding theme in the Goth scene is accepting people who are different, accepting people who would normally be outcasts. And yeah, that was something Christ was very big on.
When emotions build up to intense levels, we need some way of managing them. And cutting is a very physical strategy for doing that. So one of the practical things I want to say to people who cut themselves is that it is all right to have strong feelings. Jesus had strong feelings.
I think there's a danger that you build up rules, you become judgmental. And being a Goth means that you meet so many people with so many different attitudes and beliefs that it's very hard to be judgmental anymore, and you end up having to believe in the God himself rather than the rules that you build up around him.
The body of Christ is in eternal life. Please, may the blessing of the Lord Jesus Christ rest upon you and grant you all that is needful for you in your life. May he give you joy in your heart.
I think there are things about it which could definitely be sort of extrapolated and put into a much broader alternative service, which I think would be very appealing to young folks on a more sort of emotional, relational basis, yeah.
The Reverend Marcus has risked alienating his flock to reach a younger congregation. Has the gamble paid off?
I've tried a few services before and I haven't felt very welcomed at them, not kind of welcomed as myself.
You come to this service and you get a lot from it, obviously.
Yeah, I do. It's got quite impressive, significant kind of spiritual value for me, so yeah.
So through the service, would you now say that you are a Christian?
Yes, I would say. Yes,
So-
which is quite a shocking thing, I think, for me to say. I think the old me would be horrified.
So you're one in the bag then?
Yeah, I think so. I've seen nabs.
Wow, that was very different. Just been to church and now they've all gone clubbing. Phyllis didn't make it, sadly. She got tired, but she said that she really enjoyed it. So Marcus is doing a great thing here. It's very progressive, very brave, very daring. I think if it gets young people back into the church, that's a great thing. But the real challenge for Marcus would be to get this lot here on a Sunday morning. If he can do that, the guy should be canonised, because getting Goth out of bed in the morning will be a miracle.
Interesting stuff from Dominic.
Well, a Goth Eucharist might get a few more young people into church, but across the UK, church
Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm a priest, but I'm also a committed, card-carrying Goth. 6 to 7 years ago, I met, by the strangest of coincidences, a Dutch girl called Judith, who was a Goth from Amsterdam, whilst I was in a monastery in the south of France, in Thésée. And she was just wearing a black negligee and nothing else. We started going out and got engaged, and she was very much a card-carrying Goth with all the white face powder, the black eyeliner, and 24/7 all the time. So I think actually it was through her that actually I started going to Goth clubs and actually meeting a whole new bunch of friends. In the environment in which I grew up, it was quite macho, I suppose, quite materialistic, and it was about being popular. And not about being yourself, but actually just being part of the crowd and just buying into that. I thought when I joined the church, actually, I could make some difference, just to draw along people as they are. And it has helped a lot in that. But actually, I've met quite a lot of prejudice in the church. There was a complete lack of any sense of integrity about life. And that's what I think the Goth community has offered. It's a very loving, supporting environment in which you're accepted for who you are, not for who you're trying to be. So many clergy I've met, so many priests I know, have such a small mind about so many things. They see so many things as being unacceptable because of what you wear or your attitude, and God can't love you for who you are. One of the things you learn after a while as being part of the Goth community is that there are so many different people with so many different lifestyles that it becomes very difficult to judge people any longer. And you have to be quite honest and open and confront your own prejudices. And I found actually, particularly in sexual orientation, I was never particularly homophobic, but I had some issues of it as a teenager. But in terms of bisexuality or transgenderism or a whole range of sexual orientation issues, I've changed radically in my opinion from just meeting other people who have been more honest and more open about them. And not seeing them as a threat. I guess what makes me a bit different from other priests is actually I'm quite prepared to be myself. And if that means it shocks people, or it upsets them, or it doesn't fit in with the mould, then I don't care.
Inclusive church in which all sorts of people feel at home.
When you're a Christian, sometimes everything is all really upbeat and everybody wants to talk about good and happy things. And life isn't all happy and isn't all good, and there's dark sides that it's good to explore. And darkness and light in Christianity is really important. We're in St Edward's, Kingdom Martyr, in the middle of Cambridge.
I think the church ought to be accessible to all kinds of people, really, so I want to have a broad, inclusive church in which all sorts of people feel at home, and I think Goths are going to feel more at home at this kind of service where they can come in their gear, play their music. They're not going to feel so at home in an ordinary Sunday service.
Love receives the world's applause. Lust is furtive, ashamed and embarrassed. Love pursues the good of the other with self-control, concern, reason and patience. Lust pursues its own gratification, impatient of any control, immune to reason. Love thrives in candlelight and conversation. Lust is equally happy in a doorway or a taxi, and its conversation is made of animal grunts and cries.
Fraser gave me the topic of lust tonight, and yeah, I did. Yeah, probably a day or two searching for tracks.
It's amazing to be in a church which is using music which really connects with you. You know, hymns are okay, but that's not our music, is it? And to be able to just relax and be connected with music in a real way. Authentic. It's more authentic than any other kind of music for us, you know.